I wanted to share just a little bit from my own journey from the very beginning of just how, of course, every journey is so different, as I say all the time, and every journey comes with a lot of obstacles and challenges. I like to put it as in every section of each time that you connect with your journey, it changes every single time. From the very beginning, of course, I did reach out with my birth family almost 10 years ago, and those times are so different to now. The feelings, the connections and relationships have changed over time. I also want to point out, of course, every adoptee has their own choice if they want to connect with birth family. Of course, they may hear news that they don't want to hear about their birth family, or whether it's too late to even connect with them, or they may not find anything at all. Every adoptee does have a different path, and it can be very hard to take in news, take in everything that you might not want to hear, or things that you might not ever be prepared for. For myself, all those years ago, I want to start this sort of timeline from the very start, and I want to talk about exactly those challenges. And for myself, with me trying to think to myself, I always thought to myself when I was 21, when I first connected with my birth family, I said to myself, I am prepared for this. I know I am, but I knew that I wasn't, because I had no idea what to expect. And when I was 21, I was 20 actually, when I was 20 and turned 21, around the time that I connected with my birth mother, I remember just pulling out the information and having the names on paper. And that was my first big step with just trying to connect. And I said to myself, as a 20-year-old, I said, I must know who these people are. I want to find out who they are. And I'm willing to take every chance that I can, and to search and research and look through. I didn't understand any of sort of obstacles or challenges that would face me along the way. There's been a lot, and I'm not saying that it's all been bad, not at all. It's been a great story. It's changed my life. This whole story and my journey for myself, it's part of me. It's made me who I am, and it's grown my personality over the last 10 years. But I remember just from the very beginning, I was very excited. Of course, you get overwhelmed with excitement, as any adoptee would when they're trying to connect or find information. Is trying to connect those puzzle pieces and put them all in one. And for myself, from the very beginning, I remember just pulling out the information, looking up the names, and I started with my birth mother. Now, the name on my document that I had from the very beginning, from my orphanage in Russia, the birth father's name was completely different to whatever expected. I didn't even realize, though, of course. I didn't understand. And when I was searching up my birth father, whose name was written down on paper, which was a completely made up name, I didn't get any matches, and I thought there was something going on here. No one knew of this person, the connections didn't make sense, it just didn't work out. But when I connected with my birth mother through a community group, I started thinking to myself, this is such a big hurdle that I've jumped. And connecting through, I remember I reached out to a community group through a Russian social media website. I remember just searching for my birth mother, and I reached out to people. I said, hey, excuse me, I really am trying to find this person I believe is my mother. I came from an orphanage. I came to New Zealand at the age of 2 years old. I wonder if you can help me. It didn't take long until I did get some answers, and I knew I wasn't prepared for any responses. I was at my parents' place at the time, and I remember sitting down with them and saying, look at this photo. I think this is my birth mother. I think this is her. And my parents looked at me and said, Alex, I think we have a match. It was a lot of excitement, of course, from the very beginning, getting that match and getting that connection. It was a lot of excitement, but it still wasn't, I knew that this was just the beginning. It still had not finished yet. To this day, it's still going. It's never going to be finished. I'm never going to feel the full closure. It's a new chapter. It's not a closure, it's a new chapter for myself. That's how I feel. So I remember connecting through, getting a phone number, and somebody actually went, before my birth mother provided her phone number, someone actually went to her place and said, hey, we believe you have a son, he's looking for you, are you okay with this? And I'm not gonna lie, she said in the beginning she doesn't have a son. And she said, I don't know what you're talking about, this can't be right, please, just give me a few days. And then she did say, yes, I do have a son, I've only had one child, and this is him. And at that point I was, this is where it comes in, where it's like up and downs, and you think to yourself, this is going to be a challenge ahead, but I know I can push through this. I can do this, and I am I'm not regretting it at all. I'm not regretting pressing that big button of choosing this journey. I remember when I got her phone number and it was her birthday, and I called through to her birthday, and she just turned 40, or I think she was 41, 40. And I remember saying, happy birthday. And this was the first ever communication I had of my birth mother. I had no sense of understanding anything about her life. I didn't know any of the Russian language. I didn't know any of that. I knew hello, that was it. And I remember I had a friend there, and his family was there, and they spoke Russian. They translated for me. And man, I was so nervous. The calling through, I remember how long it took to call through to her. Got through to her and had a very brief conversation. You're always in the situation where you imagine what it might be like. You imagine what it's like to connect with a birth family for the first time. You think, okay, I've got all these questions in this notepad. You might have a notepad ready, and you think you're just going to connect like that. I was literally stunned by the situation. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know what to say. I was sitting there thinking, now what? I said, hello, how are you? How's life? I said, I'm working too, but I want to focus on her life. She asked me a little bit about my life. After that phone call with my birth mother, it was like, okay, this is difficult. This is going to be a challenge. But I knew to myself at the same time, this was what I wanted. This is what I wanted to know. I wanted to know who she was. And seeing photos of her, of course, that was the big thing for me with connecting with my birth mother. I just wanted to know about her life. I wanted to connect with her. I wanted to see photos. I wanted to see all of that for myself. This was almost 10 years ago. Things had definitely changed since then. She then provided information of my birth father. And this is where her friend Eleonora has always been involved. She lives in the same town as with my birth mother. And she said, this is your birth father's profile. You approach this how you want to approach it. I had no idea how to approach it. Well, what do you say? I was given this profile, this write message, write a message to this person. It was right in front of me. I was afraid that he might reject the message, or might not want anything to do with me. I knew that this was going to be another hurdle that I had to cross. And with me saying this in this video, I'm not saying that it's all, I'll be honest, I'm not trying to say it's all big challenges, it's not big hurdles, but there are going to be hurdles along the way. Depending on every story is so different, every situation is so different. And after that, after I got in contact with my birth mother, a week out from this, I reached out to my birth father, who I thought was my birth father. He is. At the time, I thought, okay, this person could be, might not be. But as soon as I saw photos of him, I said, yes, this is definitely my birth father. I remember clicking that message, and I had to use Google Translate. I translated through, and I said, hello, how are you? I don't mean to scare you or alarm you. And you got to think of the other person. You got to put yourself in their shoes. And that's what I've done all the time with both of my birth parents. I always put myself in their shoes and just wonder, imagine this young person is reaching out to you 20 years later and trying to connect with you. What do you say? How do you comprehend everything? It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for you. And that is exactly how I felt with connecting with my birth father. I connected through to him, and I remember him saying in these words, please just wait a minute. I'll get back to you in a few days. I will just take everything in. Who was your birth mother? Please tell me your birth mother's name. And I remember the day that he did get back to me one morning. I woke up and he said, Sasha, my beautiful son, I am so thankful and grateful you contacted me. I didn't know anything about you. I didn't even know you existed. And he was very angry with my birth mother in the very beginning. He said, I don't know why she never told me. This will take me a while to take things in. And I said, of course, I completely understand you. I told him that life is fine, life is good for me. I was raised really well by my beautiful parents, by my beautiful family here, and he was so happy about that. He was so happy to see that I was raised well. He said, I want you to come and visit my family. I want you to be part of my family, and I'm waiting to meet you. And this is where you get this overwhelming experience of taking that all in, learning about his life, and there's little pieces that you start to learn about. This is all before I did meet him. This is all throughout 2013 of me connecting, learning about his life. We're sharing photos, we're having a laugh over videos and all of that stuff. And back then it was always through Viber and Skype, the normal old Skype calls. I know people still use Skype calls, but but Viber was the thing that we were using at the time. WhatsApp, I don't know if that was around or we just didn't use it. So when we were connecting there, we'd always connect through like that. And he would learn a little bit of English and things like that. But before we got into those conversations, I will never forget that first Skype call. I connected a webcam up. He wanted to see me. I remember sitting there and just connecting through and just looking at him. He was very still. He was sitting there. He was looking at the camera. He was looking straight at me. And he started getting very emotional, crying the whole time. His wife was with him. His 4-month-old daughter was there at the time, Sonia, and she's, coming up 10 years old. So things have changed over time. They've changed a lot. But I remember sitting down and talking to him, and he was just looking straight at me, and he was crying, getting emotional. He said, please come and see the family, come to Russia, come and meet us. We'd love to meet you. And this is when the connection started to grow. With my birth mother, that connection to this day as well, it was very broken. It wasn't a lot of communication like with my birth father. So my birth father was always in contact, but my birth mother, things are just not so easy for my birth mother. Completely understand that. I always say to myself, put yourself in her shoes. And then I remember later on just getting myself prepared, ready to go over there. And this was not until November. And this was when everything built up, the reality hit. And that's when I went to go and meet my birth parents. And then you get these sections of feelings. So in the beginning, you get all these you get these exciting feelings as an adopted person trying to connect with birth family. You get these excited feelings about, oh, I found something. I'm wanting to connect with these people. This is exciting for me. And then you get this other sort of part of where you have a lot of questions and you wonder why, or you try to figure out, why was I left in the orphanage? Why me? What happened? Why wasn't I a wanted child? What happened? I want to know what happened. And then you don't get angry about it, but a lot of adoptees get on both sides, and I completely understand that as well. But I had moments where I was like, why didn't my birth mother tell my birth father? She should have said something. And if she couldn't look after me, I just wish that she had told my birth father at the time. And that was the past, and I've been raised by a family, so I don't know any different. I was adopted by a beautiful family, so I don't know any different about how my life would be so different if I were still there. So I always think to myself that, and I don't think of it as I wish this is what happened, because I'm perfectly happy where I am. But I always wonder about that. And there was all these questions about just, back in the time, my birth mother, we asked her multiple times, we said, why didn't you tell my birth father? And she just says, I don't know. And so I just say to her, look, hey, everything's fine. We are connecting now with the present. Let's focus on this. But there's all these questions that you get, of course, all the time, the hurdles that you have to jump. And to try and get some information out is always like trying to push. It's like trying to open a big key lock in the door. And you always wonder yourself, this is going to take however long it takes. And I remember when it came to November of that year of me connecting with my birth family, I remember going over there. I got my passport renewed, I got everything ready to go. And I was ready to meet my family. And I remember when I was ready to get over there, and my parents, they dropped me off at the airport, they stayed with me, and because I was so nervous, I said, Mum and Dad, I'm just so nervous about connecting with these people I've never met before, and these are my biological parents, but I'm so damn nervous about connecting with them, and I don't know how I'm going to respond. I don't know if I go over there and they might turn away. They might say, I don't want to meet this person. I don't want to meet my son. I don't want anything to do with him. They could change your mind at any minute, and that was always my biggest fear. That was my biggest thing on my mind. I didn't care if it was cold. I was ready for the cold. I was like, throw the cold temperatures at me, but it was only the start of winter, But I was really nervous about getting all the way over there, flying 2 days, and then the next day, your birth mother could say, look, I've changed my mind. I'm not available today. I don't want to meet my son. And that was my biggest fear because of our broken communication. But she was ready to meet me. When I met her, of course, it's like a weight just dropped off my shoulder. I was happy because it was a sense of closure at the same time, but it still wasn't closing. It wasn't full closure. It was opening a new chapter, more of the new chapter. 80% of more of the chapter, 20% of closure. I met her and I met her husband at the time, and he sadly passed away quite a few years ago now. But I didn't realize too much about her life. I didn't realize how difficult her life had been. I also didn't understand that she was in an orphanage all her life until I got there. So that made me understand more about just how she approaches things, how her personality is. That's why I'm just like to myself, just make that connection with her and do as much as you can on your side. And that's as much as you can do for her. And I always thought about that, and that was so vitally important. I met her, the emotions were just, they were hard to take in. I was very nervous. The only thing I could think about was, what am I going to say? What am I going to say to her? I'm worried that she's not going to like me. I'm worried that she's going to be put off by me speaking only English, and there's all these things I worried about. And of course it was a natural response. I knew no Russian. I only knew hello and thank you, and that was it. And I said to myself, this is where I struggled as well. That hurdle of, that challenge of just, it's part of your identity, you don't know the language of your birth country, you just don't know it. I was going to say of your birth country, all of that. It's kind of embarrassing for yourself. That's how I felt. Of course I did. I got there and I couldn't read a single word, I couldn't read a single sign. So I told myself, I need to learn this. I need to learn as much as I can because I want to connect with my blood. This is my blood. This is my blood. This is my home here. This is my home here. The New Zealand is my home, my childhood, my memories. I get emotional thinking about my childhood quite a lot, I love my childhood. And I always think about that. This is part of my life here. This is my life here. But my blood side is always going to be Russia because that's my country of birth. So me going to that country and just being completely unaware of the language and not understanding anything, that was one thing that I had to take on board. And that's more of an emotional challenge. That wasn't a direct obstacle. That was an emotional, overwhelming challenge that I had to take on board. And getting in the car, driving to see my birth mother, looking outside, understanding that, hey, I could have had this life. I could be living in somewhere here. I don't know where. That was one thing that I had to take on board, and I couldn't understand exactly how that would be for me. I couldn't. I wouldn't know any different if I was there. I would know no difference. I remember the whole time though, I would always be connecting with my birth father, talking on Viber. My entire time, the minute I landed in Russia to go and meet my birth family, I'd always be talking to my birth father, talking to my parents. The time zone was a little bit out of whack, so had to wait till the evening and they would be waking up, and then my morning it would be their evening. I'll be calling my parents like every night, every single night, just to let them know that, hey, everything's okay. I found what I've been looking for. And that was the sense of closure in that regard, in that respect. That was that sense of closure. Meeting my birth mother, big overwhelming feeling, and then the very next day, I only met her for about 3 hours, actually, 3-4 hours, and then we had to drive back to Moscow. But the very next day, I went to go and meet my birth father, and this was more excitement. This was a lot more excitement, because he was calling me, and he was excited, and he told me about his family. He said the whole family's here, but I always had really, really bizarre dreams there. Just the night before, just thinking, my mind was telling me, replaying what it would be like to meet your birth family. So that was all, that was the first time. And then you get this sort of sense of emotion, you start to connect with your country of birth, you get back to New Zealand. I grew up a little bit more, I got to understand so much more, and I really felt like I grew up a lot after that, when I came back here. And then later on I went back to Russia, and I went back with my parents and my ex-girlfriend at the time, and we went back over to Russia. And I remember my parents went to go and meet my birth parents, and this was another whole journey. It felt like a new journey. I was like, I've been here before, I can connect, I know where to go, sort of. I still don't know the language, but I'm still young and I'm still figuring things out. That was that emotion after that. That's what it felt like after that. And seeing my birth father again, I was like, hello, like, nice to see you again. That's what it felt like. It really felt like that. So that was the second time. And then over time, the journey has changed so much. The patterns have changed. My connection with my birth mother has changed. My connection with my birth father has changed. All different ups and downs, different aspects for myself. I remember like in 2018 was the big one that really affected me a lot with my birth mother, and seeing how I've grown up knowing as an adult, I've learned more about her life, but also just seeing the reality of how difficult her life is. And that was one thing that it really struck me in 2018. It was quite emotional actually, because we took a train and we went to go and see my birth mother. My birth father came with me, and just seeing the way she was that day, I was so affected by it, and I just really didn't know how to take that on, because it was just so much that I was just trying to understand for myself. I was only 25, but I was still really just like, this is really, really difficult. I really want to help her somehow. I feel bad. I feel like I feel helpless. And so when I went to go and see her, she always took me to the side. She always say, "This is my son, hello, I love you so much." And I just wished and prayed that she didn't have the difficult life that she had as a child. And I don't wish that on anybody. And so for her, and for all I said to myself is I need to connect more with her. And that was a challenge in itself. That was a challenge for me to take on, to say, look, I want to help her. I want to be there for her. I want to connect with her, because I wouldn't call that a challenge actually. I would call that just an emotional response of just how I'm trying to react with my birth mother, and telling myself I need to keep on connecting with her, because I do, because I care about her. And so I feel like I want to look out for her. That's how I feel. And I remember with my birth father, he came along and he's been also positive and openness about this, and he's been like, I want to help you connect with your birth mother more. I will do everything I can. If you lose connection with her, please tell me and I will do everything I can. And that's what he did many times. I would lose connection with my birth mother. She would lose her phone, so Misha would call friend Eleonora and say like, hey, can you please help Alex connect with Tatiana? I know this is difficult, please, if you can. And I thank him so much for that, because he always made sure that was always going to happen. One thing I want to say as well too is just every time I come back here, I always go and see my family as soon as possible with coming back. I go and see my mum and dad, I give them big hugs, and I just say, look, hey, thank you. Thank you so much for making me who I am and raising me to who I am today. Because, I say, look, seeing my birth parents is a blessing, and seeing them and connecting with them, every time I see them, I'm just so thankful to be part of their lives. And that, to me, I really feel that every time I come back, it gets stronger and stronger. But I always feel like, waving goodbye is not always the easiest thing to do. And that's always going to take its own jumps every single time. But I want to fast forward, of course, to last year. And last year when I was actually living in Russia, I was living in Russia for 6 months, and I was connecting with my culture and all of that. I've been learning the language, I study the language every week, and it's just, things have changed so much for me. I mean, I'm 30 years old now, and things have changed a lot. And I can connect so much more every time I go back to Russia now. And I just tell myself, look, hey, I know my way around, I can connect with this, I feel completely comfortable with it. I don't feel like I don't feel lost there. Don't feel confused there. I don't feel like I'm needing to look around and big culture shock. It doesn't feel like that anymore. But going there it's exciting for me. And this is where it's just taken so long for that path to get to that point. But it's always going to continue. It's always going to continue. And there's so many moments, as you all know, there's so many moments with my birth mother I'm still connecting with. And that's always going to take, it's going to take forever. It's going to take a very long time. With my birth father, he's like, come to St. Petersburg, I'm waiting to see you again. Summer, winter, spring, autumn, he's like, please come and visit soon. Please come and visit us soon. So there's all these connections with that. And they're always going to take such a long time for me to completely understand the full journey. It's like there's a path that's always been built. It's never going to be finished. It's always going to keep going. And I understand this from the very beginning. Well, I didn't understand it as a 20-year-old because I thought, okay, cool, I'm going to meet my birth parents, going to go back, that's going to be it. In the beginning, it's always kind of like, okay, I met my family, I can move on. But that wasn't really the case. I just was like, I want to connect more with this, but that was my choice. Every adoptee has their own choice, of course, whether they want to connect with birth family or not. If they have no information, it makes it a lot harder. Of course it does. I completely understand that. And I really feel for people that don't have any information. But I always say, if you don't have any information, try and connect with the culture, try and learn about the culture and try and connect that way. And if you have nothing nothing at all, no information at all, I understand that this is really hard to take on, and it almost pushes you back. It almost pushes you to not wanting to pursue any journey at all. I completely understand that, and that can be really hard to take on board for any adoptee. So that's always a different journey and different path and different way of approaching the situation. Whether you want to find birth family, you find out they're no longer alive, or they've gone missing, and you have so many questions, it makes you angry. Completely understand that as well. It can make any adoptee angry about that. And this is all part of the journey. It's all part of a different journey. It's very unique. You know, every journey is so unique. And I understand that, you know, if I connected with my birth family and if I found out that they were no longer alive, of course I would be I'd be very upset. I'll be honest, of course, too. If I found out that, you know, things had happened to my birth parents, it'd be harder. It'd be a slower journey for me, wanting to connect with my culture. I would always be there, always wanted to connect with the culture, and I would always go back. But I knew that the feeling within myself would be not wanting to connect so strongly. But I know that everyone has a different path. I'd be trying to connect with relatives. I'd be focusing on that. And that would take its own time. I wouldn't know exactly where to approach it, but I would do my best that I could. So many obstacles that would be thrown along the way. My adoption journey, of course, I've been sharing so much of it. And every single step and every single moment that I've been sharing, every part has all different ups and downs. And it's not just a clear path. It's never a clear path. There's always going to be things in the way that you have to try and push out of the way, but understand and do it appropriately until you feel like you just keep going through. And a lot of us adoptees go through a lot. And I have my family here. I love my family to pieces. I have my family over in Russia. I have all of that. But of course, at the end of the day, it's always going to be a non-stop journey. It's always going to be a non-stop journey. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you for listening, and thank you for hearing me out with just how I've been feeling over the last 10 years, really. Just how every single moment is so different, every single section is so different, every single part of those years, and again, in the next 10 years, it's going to be completely different again. Who knows? I might be married, I might have kids, and I might be taking my family over to, Russia to connect with my birth family, and it might change over time. I know with my birth mother as well, she's not doing so well, so I will be just sort of following that up as much as I can. And for myself, I need to, and I really want to go and see her, but of course at the time, right now, it's not appropriate to do that, but I would love to go and see her, but I know that that's just a thing that I have to take on board, I have to take all that on and just continue on with doing whatever I can, and that's what I'll keep doing. So thank you all so much. Look after yourselves, and thank you for watching, and please take care. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for tuning in, and thank you if you're adopted or not. Thank you for listening to my journey and following my journey. If you're an adoptee and this is helping you, if it's raising awareness for yourself as an adoptee, if you need that support, I'm here to talk about this and reach out. So this is what I do. And I love doing it. I love sharing this. I love sharing my journey, sharing my path. So thank you all so much. Look after yourselves, and until next time, до свидания из Новой Зеландии. И спасибо большое.